My name is Robert, and there's something I need to tell you, something I should have understood much earlier. 42 years ago, I built my first successful business. Over time, that business turned into others. By my early 50s, I had reached what people call financial freedom. No debts, multiple properties, investments that paid me whether I worked or not. From the outside, it looked like I had won the game. People called me disciplined, focused, a real entrepreneur. Young men asked me how I did it, what sacrifices I made. What they never asked was what those sacrifices actually cost. Because, while I was building wealth, I was slowly losing the parts of my life that truly mattered. I'm 77 years old now. The companies are gone. I sold them years ago. The money is still here. But if I'm honest, I would trade every dollar I have for the chance to go back and make different choices. And if you're watching this while telling yourself just a few more years, I need you to hear my story, because I was you, and I was wrong. Let me take you back to the beginning. I was 29 years old when I started my first company, newly married, full of ambition, convinced that hard work would solve everything. Everyone around me said I was obsessed. I called it commitment. The first years were brutal. Long nights, missed weekends, canceled plans. I told myself it was temporary, that I was building something for my family, and for a while, they believed me, or maybe they just hoped I was telling the truth. I remember saying, once this business is stable, I'll slow down. Once we reach this number, I'll be present. That promise followed me for decades. When my first child was born, I was in a meeting. I arrived hours later. I told myself I'd make up for it. I didn't. I missed school events, family dinners, simple moments that didn't seem important at the time. I was always physically present somewhere else, mentally somewhere further ahead, always chasing the next milestone, the next level. I convinced myself that providing financially was the same as being there. It isn't. Around that time, I started measuring my life in outcomes instead of moments. Revenue charts, growth reports, net worth statements. Everything became numbers, clean, predictable, safe. Relationships, on the other hand, felt messy, emotional, inconvenient. So I leaned harder into what I could control. I told myself that success required distance, that emotions were distractions, that someday, when things slowed down, I would learn how to reconnect. I didn't realize that distance, once normalized, becomes permanent. There were moments when I felt the cost, even back then, quiet signals I chose to ignore, a look that lingered too long, a conversation that never fully started. I would notice the tension, feel the discomfort, and then bury myself deeper into work. Productivity became my escape. As long as I was busy, I didn't have to face what I was slowly losing. I told myself that discomfort was just the price of ambition. In reality, it was a warning. I used to believe that being indispensable at work meant I mattered, that if people relied on me professionally, it proved my value. But what I didn't understand was that being irreplaceable at the office often meant being absent at home. And absence doesn't announce itself loudly. It accumulates quietly, day by day, mist by mist, until one day, the space you left becomes part of the structure of other people's lives. Looking back now, I see how easy it was to confuse momentum with meaning. I was always moving forward, but I wasn't moving closer to my family, closer to myself. I thought slowing down meant losing ground. I didn't realize that sometimes slowing down is the only way to actually arrive. By the time I noticed, I had already trained everyone around me to expect less of me emotionally. By my early 40s, the business was thriving. We upgraded houses, took better vacations. On paper, everything looked perfect. But inside the house, something had changed. Conversations were shorter. Silence lasted longer. I had become a guest in my own home. I noticed it, but I ignored it. I told myself it was just a phase, that things would reconnect later. Later became my favorite lie. I didn't notice the exact moment when later stopped meaning hope and started meaning avoidance. It happened quietly, gradually. One postponed conversation turned into another. One missed evening became routine. I kept believing that time was something I owned, something I could rearrange when it suited me. I treated it like a resource that would always be there. What I didn't understand was that time doesn't belong to us. It only passes through us. There were nights when I came home late and the house was already asleep. Lights off, dishes put away, silence everywhere. I would walk through the rooms like a stranger, careful not to wake anyone, telling myself I was being responsible, mature, driven, but standing there alone, briefcase still in my hand. I sometimes wondered when exactly I had stopped being needed and started just being tolerated. I told myself that sacrifice was noble, that this was what good providers did, that everyone would understand eventually. But understanding fades when absence becomes the pattern. Love needs exposure, presence, repetition, and I was present in spreadsheets more than in conversations, available to clients more than to my own family. I didn't lose them all at once. I lost them slowly, in inches, not miles. What hurts most now isn't the arguments we had, it's the ones we never did. The conversations that never happened because everyone learned it was easier not to try. Emotional distance doesn't explode, it settles. It becomes the new normal. And by the time you realize something is missing, people have already adjusted their expectations of you downward, quietly, without telling you. By the time I reached true financial freedom, my relationships were already exhausted. The people I loved had learned how to live without me. And that's the part no one warns you about. People don't wait forever. They adapt. They move on emotionally long before they leave physically. When my marriage ended, I wasn't even shocked. I was numb. I had been married to my work for so long that the distance felt normal. After that, I did what I always did. I worked more. I grew more. I achieved more, and I felt less. In my early 60s, I had a health scare that forced me to stop. For the first time in decades, I had nothing urgent to chase, no crisis to solve, no deal to close. And sitting there alone, I asked myself a question I had avoided my entire life. What was all of this for? I had built financial security, but for who? The people I thought I was doing it for had already paid the price. I tried to reconnect. I really did. Calls, visits, dinners. But time doesn't work like money. You can't invest later and expect compound interest. Missed moments don't grow back. Relationships don't reset. They remember. They remember every absence, every excuse, every time you chose something else. Today, I have freedom. Real freedom. I wake up without alarms. I travel when I want. I don't worry about bills. And yet, this is the quietest my life has ever been. The achievements I thought would define me are footnotes now. The companies moved on without me. My name faded faster than I expected, but the moments I missed, those stayed. They shaped the people I love, and they shaped the distance between us. Here's what took me over 50 years to understand. Financial freedom without presence is empty. Success without relationships is hollow. Money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy back time. If you're working late again tonight, telling yourself it's necessary, ask yourself what you're really trading, because work will always be there. Another opportunity will always appear, but the people you love are on a clock you can't see, and one day, without warning, that time runs out. If I could speak to my younger self, I wouldn't tell him to stop building. I would tell him to stop disappearing, to leave earlier sometimes, to be there when it mattered, to understand that legacy isn't what you leave behind financially. It's how people remember feeling around you. I reached financial freedom, but I missed what truly matters. And if you're listening to this now, maybe you still have time to choose differently.